I've talked a lot about this offseason, how the Chicago Bulls improving in the margins should help them win more games. Today, I'm going to talk about one of the areas that the Bulls stepped back last season that I want to see them get back to being one of the better teams in the NBA with. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize. You guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today. Going to be a little bit of a shorter episode today. One topic that we're going to get into, and that is the Bulls being a clutch team. The Bulls finished top 3 in clutch rating 2 seasons ago, and then last season they dropped all the way down to number 16th in that same metric, right? And so while the Chicago Bulls ranked top 5 in defense, even though I think that number was a little bit inflated, and we've talked about that plenty over the course of this offseason, so I'm not going to hamper on that too long, but the offense did not feel as crisp as what it did 2 seasons ago, especially in late game situations when you were facing tough defensive teams that just did not back down. The Chicago Bulls had trouble with last season, and it was pretty consistent, right? And when you look at the Chicago Bulls, their assist percentage dropped down to 23rd last year in the NBA in clutch performances. And while DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine are top 12 in effective field goal percentage over the course of the season, we know that we can strengthen our late game offense. And there's a couple of different ways that I think this modern Bulls team, this Bulls team coming into the season is going to do it. First off, I think that this is going to be a much better defensive team when you look at adding defenders like Javon Carter and Torrey Craig. They're going to be big factors in the Chicago Bulls rotation. That should definitely help the three-point shooting that they're bringing as well. While we're not going to say that the three-point shooting itself is going to just make the Bulls this better team, but like when you look at how many games, we talked about it so much this offseason, 17 games the Bulls lost last season by 5 points or less. And then about 7 or 8 of those games, they lost by a score or less. So when it comes into it, right, the Chicago Bulls adding three-point shooting is going to help. But I also think in clutch scenarios, having a defense that's going to be much better in the half court, right? Yes, I know everybody has pointed out the Bulls being a top 5 defense, but in the half court, the Bulls left much to be desired in that half court defense. And I think, that being a better part of this team and just a more solid and consistent part of the team is definitely going to help next season as well. But then you got to also look at how the three-point shooting is going to help, provide space for DeMar DeRozan to go to work. Hopefully space for Nikola Vucevic to look more like he's looking in FIBA play, next season with the Chicago Bulls, and hopefully Billy Donovan evolves some things as well. And so, also the more three-point shooting are already solid three-point shooters, and Zach LaVine and Patrick Williams hopefully taking steps up as well. And then also you got to look at Kobe White, right? Kobe White really unlocked something with his offense in the second half of that season, and so hopefully that's a little bit more consistent. The Bulls coming in with a healthy team outside of Lonzo Ball, of course, that goes without saying at this point, but coming in with Zach LaVine fully healthy, with the additional three-point shooting, and the better overall defense as well that I think this team is going to have, the Bulls should be a better clutch team because of that, right? And so it's still going to come down to DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine in a lot of late game scenarios, and we want to see better inbounds plays, things like that. The Chicago Bulls in close games, we always knew, right? The Bulls can get out to this lead, and if it wasn't a huge lead, and sometimes even if it was a huge lead in the fourth quarter, those leads never felt safe. We need to get back to being a better clutch team. And so, yes, that's going to rely on those players, but we need that the role players as well on this team to play better. And we have much better role players coming into the season. So, if the Bulls can get back to being a clutch team like they were 2 seasons ago, it can drastically help this team win more games, right? And so, when you're looking at the improvements of the team, and I know this is a Bulls-focused channel, and I'm a Bulls fan, and I'm a fairly lean more towards optimistic than pessimistic in most things with the Chicago Bulls. This is something that I am definitely going to look at and see when they get in those close game scenarios, right? When they face those teams that just refuse to go away, when they get, when the lead separated by 5 points or less, in those last couple of minutes of games, how the Bulls perform in that. Can they finally start closing it out? And this is another area that we want to see Zach LaVine grow in as well. We know what DeMar is, right? His ability to get to the bucket, his ability, to get foul calls and stuff like that. DeMar DeRozan is going to bring that. But we need to see Zach LaVine also make that step in clutch performances, because if he does, and we saw a little bit of it last season, right? Like I said, towards the end of the season, we had a lot of games where Zach LaVine performed extremely well. He didn't get the support from his supporting cast, which I think is going to be something that is helped a lot by the acquisitions that we made this season. But it's not just that, right? We need everything to kind of step up in concert and to work together for this Chicago Bulls team to really improve something that they were top 3 in the whole NBA 2 seasons ago. So that is definitely a big thing, and as kind of is becoming the theme of this week, right? And that's another thing that we're also going to look at. Billy Donovan, can you draw up an inbound play, and can those players execute it, right? And I think having players that can more so focus on their roles, right? And that is what the acquisitions of Torrey Craig and Javon Carter really do bring to this team, is helping the players focus more on what they do well, right? And that's what kind of Pat Bev and his acquisition did last season as well. Like, now we have the shooters out on the outside that aren't going to pass up their shots, right? At times, Alex Caruso, as great as Caruso is, absolutely is just a bad three-point shooter, and sometimes he passes it up. We've seen P. Will do that at times too. Like, so, and Ayo Dosunmu absolutely passes up open shots at times. So we're going to have players that don't do that, which allows the Alex Carusos, the Ayo Dosunmus to more focus on getting those deflections, playing that amazing defense, right? Getting the extra possessions for the offense, and then that offense that we have those players that are going to not back down and take those opportunities and take those shots and hit them at a pretty decent clip, right? That's what we're looking at from this team. That's kind of the next step of the evolution, in my opinion. I know not everyone shares that, and everybody has their own kind of things they're looking for this season, but this is definitely one of the things that is high on that list that I want to see this Bulls team just improve on, make the proper steps in, right? And yeah, I'm not saying that that's solely the focus, or just that is going to just make this team be better. Really, everything has to come together. Everything has to come together. And so, that's one thing that we're looking at as well. So, we'll see. I think everybody's coming into the season with their own motivations. Javon Carter could be stepping in to his first consistent starting role, or if Kobe does win that out, Kobe White can say that too. Like, he hasn't been a starter the last 2 seasons. Getting back into that, whether him or Javon Carter win that starting position, they're going to know what's needed of them and what their role is overall. Alex Caruso can hopefully go back to not needing his shooting as much and getting back to that player that's just a defensive beast that gets out in transition, that finishes around the rim, his solid passing, especially in transition, and that's going to help players like Patrick Williams, Andre Drummond, hell, even Nikola Vucevic as the trailer in those situations on fast breaks. That's what this team needs to do. Be a better clutch team. We've already talked about the defense. I want to see this team be one of the top 3 defenses in the NBA next season. I also want to see us push the pace, specifically with that bench, a little bit more, since we don't have a lot of great shooters coming off that bench, but allow that bench unit, right, to come in, get out in transition because of the defense that you play, and get easier buckets around the rim, which is better suited for Ayo, better suited for Andre Drummond, better suited for Dalen Terry if he does get off the bench as well this year. So those are kind of things that we're looking at. And so, outside of that as well, it's just, I want to see Billy Donovan be one of those coaches this upcoming season that empowers some of the young guys. We keep talking about our young core and the question marks around that. Those question marks aren't going to be solved by keep hiding them away, not letting them go through their mistakes. Yes, we want to win basketball games. We're not a tanking team, so that's already going to limit the opportunities that we have, that the young players have in certain scenarios. But you have to find a way to get the young players out of there that are part of your future, right? And you have to find a way to get them out there and start building that confidence, work on part of their game. It's also up to them to show the things that they need to show in practice and training camp to show that they deserve those minutes. And so I'm not really looking at a player like Julian Phillips. I don't expect him to get a lot of minutes. If he does, great, right? If he does, it's like every other year with Billy Donovan. You have the P. Will, right, that gets a lot of minutes. You have Marko Simonovic that doesn't. You have Ayo Dosunmu that does get a lot of minutes. You get Dalen Terry that doesn't. So is this the year now that our rookie does get a lot of minutes as well? It's like every other guy. So, we'll end up seeing with that. But as we're trying to be this team that is upping our ceiling without making the major acquisitions, the only way that you can truly raise that ceiling is developing your young guys. So Peter Patton coming in here as the head of player development, yes, that is going to help theoretically some, but you also need in-game scenarios. Yes, a lot of growth and development is done in practice. It's done through training camp. We understand that it's done in the offseason. but you still need to put them out there to test them in those real live game scenarios to see what you have. So, you guys can let me know what you guys think on all that. Like, I think the Bulls can be a better clutch team this season. I think a healthy and motivated team as well is going to do that. You got DeMar DeRozan in the contract year. Hell, Patrick Williams also in the contract year, right? And so we'll end up seeing. We'll end up seeing. I really want to have so much hope for this team, and I do have hope for this team. Absolutely, right? And I like I said, I know I lean more towards being optimistic than pessimistic Bulls fan, but we still have tons of questions with this team that they need to answer. And so, it's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of focus. It's going to take, a mindset to really want that out of these players as well. So, we'll end up seeing. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about as well before we go, Joakim Noah once again releases his all-time Bulls starting five, which was Derrick Rose, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Luol Deng surprisingly at the 4, and Luke Longley at the 5, which then brought about Luke Longley is one of the best centers in Chicago Bulls history. And when you look at the center position specifically for the Chicago Bulls, we always talk the Bulls have had some really solid centers in there. They haven't had some of the all-time great. When you look at we got Artis Gilmore, Luke Longley, Horace Grant, Joakim Noah for sure, Pau Gasol if you want to count that in this time, Bill Cartwright in that. But then you quickly start getting to people like Tyson Chandler, Brandon Miller, right? You start getting into Brad Miller. Nikola Vucevic is definitely at this point a top 10 Bulls center of all time, right? So you start getting into that type of thing. And so, the one thing that I do admire about Joakim Noah is that he kept himself off that list, even though he probably should absolutely be on that list. But it just, him saying Luke Longley's name immediately went to is that really the best center that you came up with? And of course, Horace Grant and Artis Gilmore come to mind and people, and of course, Joakim Noah. But it's that center position for the Chicago Bulls, we've had a lot of tough centers in there, but we haven't had a bunch of all-time great centers in there. And so it's just an interesting piece. Who is your favorite Chicago Bulls starting center of all time? Who is it? I want to hear from you guys down below. Who's your favorite starting, and not even the starting five? Who's your favorite center, a Chicago Bulls center of all time? Let me know what you guys, what your pick is down there and all that. Make sure you guys are also watching FIBA. If you're not subscribed over to NBA Central, go over there. We're going to be having some FIBA coverage over there. We're also going to have EuroLeague coverage over there during the EuroLeague season, since ESPN is airing that as well. But that is my time for today. Like I said, shorter episode. If any news drops, you guys know I drop. I love you guys, man. Make sure you guys are following the channel at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, and we've been that for 2 years. Thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.